Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 99 of the Podcana podcast. This week, we're going to be breaking down many different tournaments that took place last weekend. We also have the pleasure of having a fantastic Lorcana player join us this episode. We have Rob De Haan. For those of you who don't know, Rob finished first in the Swiss portion of the 466 player event in Ravensburg, Germany. He qualified for the EU Championship through one of the last chance qualifiers last December. He is a long-time Magic the Gathering player, and he's tested with the likes of like Frank Carson and stuff, who's obviously qualified for Worlds. So Rob is an extremely talented TCG player and Lorcana player, so we are honored to have him on the podcast. We're going to be breaking down his deck list today, but Rob, want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I think I grew up with TCGs. I've been playing them for over 25 years now. I've mostly been playing Magic, but for the past 2 years, I think I fell in love with Lorcana. I really enjoy the community. It's so much more positive and friendlier than the general TCG audience, I would say. So I've been loving all the challenges and can't wait to see more of them. And competitive play is what I prefer doing in a TCG. So I've been enjoying myself a lot. And last weekend was like, coming home, I guess, seeing so many of my friends, feeling like it's a challenge, even while it wasn't really one. But I had a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.
Awesome, yeah. Well, it was great to see you perform so well at last week's event. Moyen, you attended as well. I sat at home recovering from jet lag from my Japan trip, being very sad that I couldn't be present at the event. But yeah, like you said, it looked like a great time. It definitely, from the outset at least, looked like a DLC level event, especially when it came down to the stream quality, the production, all that type of stuff. So I want to give both of you an opportunity to just speak about the event as a whole, roughly. Then we're going to move into our spilled ink section, and then we can dive deeper into like breaking down the deck lists and stuff like that. So Jan, I want to start off with you. How was your overall experience with the event?
Well, I had a great time at the event. I think this tournament was like kind of the biggest tournament since December.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, there was DLC Melbourne, there was like NA Continentals, but for us, since Continentals, there wasn't really any tournament even similar size to this. So there didn't really need to be great pricing. Of course, I think the pricing could have been better, but even with the pricing that this event had, it was like easily sold out. People really were just like eager to play again, but also just to meet everyone in the community again. I think the tournament was overall well run. One of my favorites was like there was I think it was 16k pieces puzzle. So like a huge puzzle with almost 500 individual small puzzles that you could like do at the event, and then it all came together to like a huge stitch. And at first I thought, okay, maybe I'll do it like after I'm out of the event, but then I realized I get tired pretty easily between rounds, and that was just like perfect to keep me engaged without getting tired. I was just like puzzling a bit between rounds. And yeah, overall the event was great.
So what you're saying is you want these big puzzles at every future DLC event?
I really wouldn't mind it. Like I don't. Also, the entire community loved it. It gave people something to do that didn't want to do like Lorcana at the time, right? We did a lot of Lorcana over the entire weekend, but maybe sometimes you just want like a little bit of a break and do your small puzzle.
Awesome. That sounds really, really cool. I saw loads of cool pictures of that, like, coming together over time and forming, which was really, really cool. And I guess we can actually get into this a little bit now, because I do think there's some questions relating to it within the spilled ink section. So, Rob, would you mind talking to us about your Amber Steel list that you brought? So obviously you finished first in Swiss on day one, and I'd just love to hear your thought process of maybe why you decided to bring Amber Steel, some of your building decisions and directions that you went with the deck, coming into this meta overall.
Yeah, of course. I was very much on the fence on what I should be playing. I had, well, just like everyone else, just adopted the blue steel. The great deck, very comfortable. Let's go. Then, of course, it got banned relatively close to the tournaments. I'm a player that generally likes to play, quote unquote, the best deck and just be good at it and jam some reps with it. So sadly, that was not possible. So I was just looking at all the new developments in the metagame. Like blue red, of course, got worse. Clearly, blue steel kind of got eliminated. What are the new decks people are starting to play? Like the green purple deck. People are playing the purple red deck in a very different kind of fashion. And as a very exciting breakout deck, Blurple was really coming along quite nicely in the week running up to it. So I think I took 3 decks with me. But in the car ride there, I was just discussing it and talking to my friend Justin Morales, also quite a skilled Lorcana player. And he was just going on about how good the Blurple deck turned out to be. And I was like, okay, yeah, that really pushes me towards just making the call. Let's go Steel Song, because it has such a good matchup against Blurple. And I think it's relatively well positioned against everything else right now as well. To be honest, I don't think there's really a matchup that is something that you really want to avoid. So I was very happy with going into the tournament with the deck, and of course I'm still very comfortable with the deck because I've played it so much before. I think it's still the first deck that I did well with at big tournaments. The list itself, to me, it feels very comfortable. It's not very exciting, I don't think. It just puts a lot of emphasis on the singers. So 4 Cinderellas, 4 Troubadours, 4 Ariels. It kind of felt mandatory to me. Of course, like the choice between Troubadour and Ursula is very, very simple. Bianca is a good card, and you need Troubadours to enable it. Of course, I like Ursula a little bit better with the Rapunzels, but the choice was relatively easy. I think the only spice in my deck is the 2 Piglets. And I can't even take the credit for that one, because whenever I play Steel Song, Frank forces me to play at least 2 Piglets.
I feel like that's very iconic to Frank, because it's like it's one of the cards in his Steel Song that like served him so well in that DLC in Lille last year.
Yeah, but he is right in that regard. The card is so good in the matchups where you need it to be good. I think I played against blue-red items, which goes very big with a lot of Sisus and B-preps. Just going Daisy into Piglets, it just runs them over. I think I was at like 15 before he got anything going. And that was just the end of it. And the other spice cards are, they're simple. They're Ariel and the Cinderella. I don't think the Cinderella is very good anymore. There's so much purple, and the Fox with a crab just kills it. But it being open decklist, I like playing one, so they have to respect it.
Sure, no, that makes
with
sense.
All the purple. And the stalemate you get from that, the Ariel Sonic Warrior is quite good. And apart from that, it's just a lot of good bodies. The only thing maybe worth mentioning is with the addition of Sisu in a lot of decks, I like having characters with more than 2 power. So I like Lawrence, I like Pete, etc.
Yeah, that's an amazing breakdown.
Yeah, I think the Piglet also started to make all the more sense since in Ruby Sapphire, in like the action heavy Shark Ruby Sapphire, it's also like Goofies were being played less and less. Some people cutting them entirely, some, or at least the count of it was like continually lowering. And then like a Piglet on the play, not matched by a Goofy, can give you like just that bit of lore to push you towards threatening the game early enough to win games against Ruby Sapphire. So I think it's like also outside of the card just being pretty good in the right circumstance. Anyways, it's also just pretty good meta call.
Yeah, and I think it's needed for the curve. I think that's the main argument that Frank has for using the card, and why I so easily accepted it. 8 2-drops feels like it's too little. Mm-hmm. And playing Ursula's in addition to the already playing 4 Troubadours seems a little excessive. So there's room for 2 more. And Lilo, I don't think is that good right now. So this one seemed like a perfect fit.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I also, honestly, I have to mention it as well. I love the one of World's Greatest Criminal Mind in this meta where, you know, not only is there the red-blue DKP like Shark list running around, but that these Ruby Amethyst lists have very much transitioned to doing like the Peter Pan and maybe Half Shark combo. So it's just another way on top of like the Zeus and maybe the strengths and stuff to get rid of the maybe Half Shark, as well as like a Sisu or something like that, right?
The one thing you haven't mentioned yet is the big beats, the pirates. I spoke to you. I tested and talked to Justin a lot, and him being an excellent green steel pilot makes me a little unrealistically scared of beat pirates. And this is a very nice answer to it.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Yeah, so before we dive deeper into, we are going to still talk about the Ravensburg event, of course. We're going to talk about the final winning deck list, and I'm also going to break down Noimnot's Ruby Amethyst, because I think he's known to be one of the best Ruby Amethyst players, and I think his deck was really, really interesting, and it seems to very much be shaping, this is kind of a core shell that a lot of other players, I think, could use to start building their own Ruby Amethyst deck. So before we move into that, of course, we have our Spilled Ink section. This is our listener question section. If you guys want to have your questions read out on next week's episode of the podcast, be sure to pop a comment down below, or also within our Discord server. So the first comment is from Nick. They say, what do you need to be able to do to defeat a Maui Half Shark Ruby Amethyst deck? What about an Emerald Steel discard deck? How about Amethyst Steel? What common weaknesses do these decks have? That seems to be the best approach to picking a deck for set championships. Do you agree? So I think it's actually quite interesting, because I kind of knew off the bat that whatever decks would perform well from this Ravensburg event, combined with whatever other decks we're going to be talking about this episode, will very much be a big influence for what players may want to pick up moving into set championships. So I think this was a great question, and I'd love to hear both of your guys' opinions on what's the best way that you guys feel would be to tackle the Maui Half Shark Ruby Amethyst decks specifically. I'd love to start off with you, Moyen, if possible.
Well, in general, I think while like the Shark Ruby Amethyst deck is a strong deck, I think it doesn't really make sense to over focus on it. I expect a very varied meta for the set champ season. So yes, you don't want to like auto lose to any of these decks, but there's the entire meta that you kind of have to be prepared for.
No pun intended.
Yeah, so I guess if you think your local meta does have a lot of Ruby Amethyst Shark, there's, I guess, how do you go about that? There's I think Amber Steel that has a pretty decent matchup into it. Then the discard decks, I don't think they're that strong against Ruby Amethyst anymore, because Ruby Amethyst is like so well not prepared, so well built to deal with Diablos. Mm-hmm. But like I think Amber Steel has a pretty good chance. I think Red Blue still does well into it, but in general, I think Ruby Amethyst is like a deck that it doesn't really destroy anything. It doesn't get destroyed by anything. Especially, it still depends on how it's built. Like in general, Ruby Sapphire is pretty good against it. But then there's like Ruby Amethyst versions that play like lots of draw, some Finders Keepers, Shark Answers, and locations. Like all of these decks have versions that are good and bad against different decks in the meta. So I guess just don't over focus on just beating one specific color combination, and just focus on playing a good deck that has a good matchup spread.
Sure. Yeah, Rob, I'd love to hear your take as well, especially since a good example is like you decided on Amber Steel, again, not specifically just because, I want to target this one deck. Like you said, it's got a good matchup spread all around. You knew that you would be prepared for these types of decks, but also for the wider meta as well.
I think I mostly agree with Jan on this one. In Magic the Gathering, we used to have a deck called Jund, which is a deck that has no really good matchups, but it's fine against everything. I think that's literally what Ruby Amethyst does. It has no really good matchups, but it definitely doesn't have any really bad matchups either. And you can tune it to be good against any matchup, I guess. So over-focusing on this deck is definitely not the right way to go. If you're worried about the card Maui Shark in general, just make sure you have a good answer. Like all the steel decks, they have Zeus. That's a perfect card to deal with it. Make sure you have one of something like that, or that you're at least prepared to deal with it. Purple decks can just set up like an Elsa grab turn. Just make sure that your plan doesn't auto fall to a resolved Maui Shark. And I also agree that there's going to be a very, very wide open metagame. I think we saw that in Ravensburg as well. All the decks were represented, all the decks were good, all the decks were playable. Just pick a deck you like, be good at it. Well, that's easier said than done, of course, but just get some reps with it. And if you're worried about a shark-heavy metagame, just make sure your deck includes a few good answers to it. And if you like steel, then I recommend Zeus. That's basically my go-to answer.
Right. It's like if you play Ember Steel, play Zeus, maybe some Criminal Minds on top of it. If you play Amethyst, Ruby Amethyst yourself, maybe you play like 1, maybe 2 Dragonfires, maybe a few Tremaines on top of the Be Prepared that you have. If you play like Sapphire Amethyst, you probably want the full 4 count of Hades if you're worried about Shark. It's like all of these decks kind of have ways to mitigate the threat.
100%, yeah. If you play an Emerald as well, right, you can make sure you've got the Brunos in there. Even if you're like really afraid of a heavy shark meta, you can add a 1 or 2 of Mother Knows Best. Like, that's something that LD mentioned around the EU Championships that's like really stuck with me, and it's that extra tool within Emerald decks that can actually be pretty effective against half sharks. Less effective if it's the Ruby Amethyst ones where the half sharks, like, again, the thing to point out is like, yes, if you are focusing on this deck in particular, if they have that Peter Pan up, then there's not going to be a particularly clean answer in terms of if you have an exerted character, they're going to get some instant value pretty much. But I guess just be aware of if there is a Peter Pan currently on the board and a half shark can come down, then it's pretty hard to avoid. You want to try to remove the Peter Pan before that happens. But yeah, it's just having answers for the card that I suppose that aren't just good against the card, but they're also good. Like, you know, Zeus is good in the general metagame, Bruno's good in the general metagame, like all of these types of stuff. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to a call of how much of a certain card counter you're going to put in, depending on how much of a certain deck you think is going to show up, right? So
yeah, that's a really good point. The Peter Pan is what makes the Ruby Amethyst Shark deck shine. Until they have 8 inked, be sure that there's no Peter Pan on board before you exert something. And if they're at 8 ink, consider exerting your big characters. In my Steel Ember list, the Biancas were really good because you can exert them relatively safely because they'll at least trade with the Maui. Don't get caught in a situation like I did in my top 64 match where my Robin Hood just got 8 by a shark. That's not the best feeling, I don't think.
It's like either set it up in a way where the shark gets the card but banishes itself, or just choose the right moment to then quest with everything to say, okay, I can let you have 1 action here, but I gained enough value from questing out.
Makes sense for sure. Yeah, so leading into the next question, this is from Lukind. They say, what is your opinion on the best Steel Song build at the moment? That deck has so many options. Do you include the Shift Singers or not? If so, which do you choose? Robin, Simba, Bolt, or Queen? I found this question particularly interesting because I definitely think, similar to Ruby Amethyst, Steel Song is kind of back on the rise after Hiram and Fortosphere kind of got banned. And I wanted to pose a question to both of you because, especially back in the set 6 meta, we very much had 2 versions of Steel Song existing, where we had like the diggy hole kind of curve Amber Steel decks, and then you had the traditional Steel Song decks. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe why we're seeing less of that diggy hole deck being played overall, and then also as we talk about the traditional Steel Song deck, maybe why we've seen cards like the Shift Queen package kind of come out, because there was definitely a time where that was a very, very powerful opener, right, where you could, like, you know, play your 1-drop Queen and then potentially sing a whole new world on turn 2. Now, it was also a very different metagame back then when you could do stuff like that, but I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on that, and maybe starting with yourself, Rob, on like when the diggy hole Amber Steel deck existed, did you play it much, and what were your thoughts on it maybe compared to like the traditional Steel Song?
Good questions. A lot of them too. Questions about Steel Song, I like all of them. In regards to diggy hole, I never really liked the deck much. Some of the draws were insanely powerful, can't lose. But sometimes I would feel like I was playing a draft deck because you're just playing some random Durdles and that's all you're doing. Mm-hmm. I think the movement from traditional Steel Song to a Dwarven Mine list or an aggressive list was just a metagame call. There were so many decks in the metagame that you would not beat in the late game, that you were forced to drop your late game aspects and go into an aggressive plan. And against the slightly more mid-range plans, you were still okay-ish because of your aggression and spells or songs. But now that the super late games like the high-rem decks have fallen off, I don't feel the need to go that aggressive anymore. The rest of the metagame has become much more combat-oriented with like all the purple decks, so just playing some random soul creatures is also less appealing, I think.
Sure.
In regards to what shift singers you should play, well, it is a bit of card disadvantage, of course, so I prefer not to play too many of them. And you have some excellent characters that just do stuff by themselves, like Cinderella, Bianca, the 2-drop singer. So the need for a shift 5-drop singer is not that big anymore. I still like to include one, though. Queen used to be very good, but I think as soon as more free power 2-drops came into the game, it kind of fell off because it feels horrible to have to shift your queen onto something just to see your opponent take it out with one character. So I haven't really touched that one anymore since that started happening. At Continentals, we played Simba. Only 2 of them, though, because it felt pretty bad having it as an uninkable. To be honest, I mostly played it because I really liked the 1-drop. The 1-drop just let you filter cards and let you discard an excessive hole in the world or something. And then as long as you're playing that one, I guess 1 or 2 of the big Simbas is fine. Mm-hmm. In regards to bolts, it's really good with Simba, sure, but individually I don't like it as much. It feels a little bit too small. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting something thrown towards me to shut you later. So don't play cards that are bad individually. So that leaves Robin Hood, which is coincidentally also my favorite shift target. It has a huge body, which is amazing with Rapunzel. Rapunzel is my favorite card, in case anyone didn't know. So I like cards that are good with it. It also replaces itself if it does get killed. So that's always going to be my choice. And Steel Song popping back on the radar now is literally just a metagame call, I think. I think the meta is wide open, and a inherently powerful deck like Steel Song that is able to sing Whole New World will always be powerful.
Awesome, yeah, amazing breakdowns for all those questions. I know I threw a lot of questions at you there. Moyen, any...
it's fine. I like the Steel Song questions. That's my thing.
Sure. Any thoughts to add on there, Moyen, or has Rob kind of covered it?
Yeah, I'd prefer to not speak too much about them, but still I kind of share the sentiment of finding the gameplay a little bit swingy. But I think everything has been covered that needed to be covered.
Sure, 100%. The last comment that we have is from Harshi. It's a little bit of a long one, so I'm going to take it a bit slow. They say, I have an idea for a new mechanic. In the old Star Wars collectible card game, players frequently revealed the top card of their deck and used the destiny number to impact the game. In Lorcana, one could do this with the cost of the card. An example would be pull the lever. Imagine this is a card, a ruby 3-cost uninkable action. All players reveal the top card of their deck. Whichever cards have the lowest cost, those players must choose and banish one of their characters. This kind of interaction makes knowledge of the top card much more valuable and adds a high roll impact when it is unknown. A more Star Wars collectible card game like card would say, reveal the top card of your deck. If the cost of the card is greater than 3, do X. Or if the cost of the card is less than the cost of one of your characters, do X. So the reason why I wanted to include this comment was, first of all, I thought it was a really cool mechanic. And yes, I agree with the commenter that it allows you, like, you know, the knowledge that you would have of the top card of your deck becomes more powerful, especially if it's paired with a mechanic like this. But it also reminded me of another mechanic where it's not the same, but it's kind of similar. Moyen, do you remember the Joust mechanic from Hearthstone? Where you would reveal, I think you'd reveal 2 minions, I don't know if it's 2 cards or 2 minions from your deck, and whichever one had the highest cost, an effect would happen.
It's kind of like a fancy coin flip, isn't it? It's like, yes, you have some... I mean, okay, when there's synergy with like cards that give you knowledge of like some of the cards in your deck, I guess that adds some interesting decisions. But when it's just like a weighted coin flip with a swingy outcome, I tend to not love these type of effects. I do think these type of effects make for much better gameplay when there's like you have when both outcomes of this type of effect. So like when your card's more expensive, do that, and when it's less expensive, do that, and then both of these kind of do something similar in power level, but you still would prefer one of these two in any situation, and you can kind of play for one as you're out. I think that can be great, but I do think this is in general a dangerous concept that can sometimes feel like it's taking away agency from the player.
It feels the reason I mentioned Hearthstone was because it feels very Hearthstone-y to me. It feels very random, and I know in that game they often said, the more random the stuff, the more fun, which sure, like it like you said, it's the same type of thing, right? It's the excitement that you get of like if you flip a card, oh my god, I got to play this card for free, or like I've completely changed the board state. But yeah, when you start to add more knowledge and maybe more control over a mechanic like this, it gets interesting. But then, if you do it too much, it becomes too easy, then something like this becomes really powerful. But I'm always a fan of just talking about new mechanics in general. Like I'm gonna mention the one I've mentioned before on the podcast, but I don't know if I've told you this one before, Rob, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where it's an idea of it maybe decks such as aggro decks where they gain a lot of lore at the start of the game, cards that will have certain effects where I guess it's similar to stuff you can do in Magic, where it's like you spend or you lose like 2 life, or you lose 3 lore or 3 life to do an effect. So in this case, maybe if you're playing a more aggressive deck, you will spend your lore total to do a certain effect, which is weird because that sounds interesting, but then also it's like that is your win condition. So you're reducing your win condition, and if you're reducing your win condition, you'd hope that you're getting a really powerful bonus from it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And do you think that could, is that a possible mechanic that you would find fun in Lorcana potentially?
Oh yeah, that sounds like a really fun mechanic. In Magic, that will probably be translated to trading like it's like the suicide decks, where you will trade your own life total for bigger benefits. With the infamous card of Death Shadow, where the lower your life is, the bigger the card is. Something like that would be great. And how would you translate this into Lorcana? Maybe you could even invert it. Like if you're over 15 lore, that guy becomes humongously big or something. Something like that would work. Trading resources is always good. Everything's a resource, I would always say. I've also played a lot of Hearthstone, so I also love the joust mechanic. And adding it to Lorcana would probably not be my favorite. It is a little random. In regard to the card that Harshi posted, I think this might be a little bit too swingy. Like whoever wins gets to banish one of their opponent's creatures might be a little bit too much. I like tacking on something extra, like destroy your creature, and if you won the joust or whatever you want to call this mechanic, you also draw a card. Just add something else onto it to at least not have it explode in your face.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, that was the Spilding section. Again, if you guys want to have your questions read out on next week's episode of the podcast, be sure to leave a comment down below or pop a comment into our Discord server. So moving on, what we're going to do before we kind of jump further into the actual Ravensburg event is I have a graphic up here from Inkdex and Inkborn Heroes, where it's the meta breakdown of week 8, and just again, we're going to talk through this briefly. We've kind of already talked about it already, but we can see that Steel Song and Ruby Amethyst are very much the decks that have been dominating lately. We can see the rise of Blurple as well. We can see that the Ruby Sapphire decks have gone down a little bit over time, and even the discard decks are a lot less represented than what they were previously. And the final thing I want to mention about this kind of bar chart that we can see is the Amber Emerald, which is the deck that actually ended up winning the Ravensburg event, is at quite a low number, I think, comparatively to the rest of the decks, which is maybe fair to say. I know on this chart it says it discards specifically rather than the Chernadog list, but we'll get into that deck specifically afterwards. But Moyen, yeah, just like your general thoughts of how the meta is progressing. Do you think this kind of makes sense? Is this what you kind of expected yourself coming into the Ravensburg event?
Well, mostly yes. I do think Blurple is quite overhyped and overplayed. I think the reasons why it's played. So okay, basically most played deck Steel Song, then Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, Blurple, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the previous event since the ban. And I think Steel Song, Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, they all have like very decent matchup spread without like any glaring weaknesses. I think while Blurple can thrive in like a Ruby heavy meta, and it can be built in a way where it's pretty good against like Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, I feel like you're kind of gambling on your matchups by bringing it because it just has atrocious matchup against Steel Song.
Mm-hmm.
So Steel Song could very much capitalize on so many people playing Blurple.
Mm-hmm.
But I think overall, I think you have better chances on making top cut as a good player playing any of the like most played decks, Steel Song, Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, than you'd have. I think playing Blurple. Outside of that, we have some discard decks, some different mid-range decks, and none of it is too crazy. The saddest part, of course, to me is like Sapphire Steel is kind of completely gone. And I know the aggro decks exist. I don't think it's a good deck. And so that is the only sad part. But outside of that, I think this is a very diverse meta, and with a lot of very viable decks.
I'm also very sad that, of course, I have to. I talk about it every podcast, but of course I have to.
Oh, Amber Emerald.
I'm also sad that Amber Emerald is not represented as much, and like I know it's a difficult deck to play, and I think I mentioned this to you. I think it was you I was talking to, Moyen, where there was a comment. I was either in their Discord or on one of their videos where the idea is, all of these Amber Emerald discard players, they like kind of keep to themselves and they whip the deck out at like set champs and then absolutely dominate because. Honestly, if you ask me my thought on that deck's position within the meta at the moment, if we look at this chart, I think into Steel Song, it's still very, very 50-50. I think the more daisies, the more piglets, stuff like that are in the deck, it's definitely harder to win. But I feel comfortable enough in that matchup where it can kind of go either way depending on how nuts the draws are. Against Ruby Amethyst, I feel I've always felt okay, but I think at least with the more anti-evasive package, it's definitely more tricky. And I still honestly feel extremely favored against Ruby Sapphire, especially against maybe a less experienced player who just has picked up the DKP version and feels like they kind of know how to play the game. And if something else we're going to be talking about later into the video when we mention Zan on the Jafar deck. A lot of the time, a Bring of Amber Emerald, because it's also not so popular, can be a bit of a surprise factor. And I feel like a lot of Lorcana players aren't so used to playing against this deck. So that alone adds a lot of value to bringing the Amber Emerald deck. So, although, like I said, I feel like it's a deck that's never going to have outstanding numbers. And as soon as it does have outstanding numbers, I know myself, I will hate that metagame because I do not want like mirror matches of stuff like that happening. And also, the reason why I think it's also decently placed is it looks like the other discard decks, specifically the green steel, which is kind of a bad matchup, is at a lower point. It's not as popular as the other decks at the moment. So I think like that's quite an interesting bring. But staying on the topic of Amber Emerald, we're going to talk about the winning list from the Ravensburg event. And it's not discard, but it is the Chernadog list. So Rob, I'd love to pass this over to you because I've mentioned before, I don't have too much experience when discussing this list. I know a lot of people played it during the blue steel meta to try and combat that deck. It's quite aggressive. It's quite fast. It's not necessarily my play style, but I've always kind of wanted to give it a shot. I'm curious on have you tried it? Have you played against it much? And just what are your thoughts on it in general? Is it maybe just like another aggro deck, or do you think there's a little bit more to this deck?
Oh, I definitely think there's a lot more to it. Mm-hmm. It is not as simple as exert your characters to get some lore. Mm-hmm. But deck, I think it got designed because of all the 4 toughness characters in it. When Bell was a big thing, that was really a reason to try to aggro without being so vulnerable to, basically a free power character on turn 1. I really enjoy the fact that this tournament was won by this deck while Blue Steel wasn't even a thing anymore. and I have played it a decent amount myself. I really like the resilience of it. And I think I think Joel is his name, he piloted it very well in the finals. He really knew the fact that, okay, my opponent is not playing any sweepers. I can just build my board and then try to have some ridiculous turns like we could see. I think on one of the turns he went tramp into Chernadog for like two ink total. That is just ridiculous. No non-be prepared deck can ever try to deal with that. Well, apparently his opponent did it once though, but it's not realistic. So yeah, it's definitely a very fun deck to play, albeit it's also not really my play style. I'm not a big fan of the only character decks, but if I would have to play one, this would definitely be high up on my list as it plays for Rapunzels.
Awesome, yeah. And just when you mentioned about knowing if your opponent has sweepers and how you can kind of build up the board, I don't know if I'll actually be able to edit it into the podcast, but there was like an image I saw floating around on Twitter where Joel just had like an insanely large amount of characters on his side of the board, and it was pretty funny to see. So yeah, like again, like you said, Rob, like really impressive that this list has won a major event. It's been able to compete against a lot of the other top performing decks within the meta, and I'm curious to see how this deck is going to develop over time for sure.
Yeah, I think Joel played it really well. I think this deck has a very different kind of plan into different kind of matchups. Like you need to know when you're aggressive, you need to know when you have to slow down and prolong the game to get your big turns off. So kudos to him.
For sure, yeah. So the only other deck I want to mention briefly before we move off of the Ravensburg event is Noimnot's Ruby Amethyst. We looked at a few Ruby Amethysts the past few episodes, and we saw some of the locations kind of coming back in. We saw the addition of Queen's Castle. We saw like I believe it was like a 3-1 split between like three libraries, one Queen's Castle, and we can see the Queen's Castle coming back in full force in this Ruby Amethyst deck. We can see the Lumiere, which Moyen, you spoke about last week, where you mentioned it was the three brothers, right? Where one of them was on like the Lumiere and had the idea of that card. So yeah, I mean, I guess we kind of did talk about Ruby Amethyst a lot at the start, right? Especially with the question within this building section. But yeah, like what, like how do you feel the development of this deck has been, and like what do you think the reasons are for why it's, I suppose, yeah, it's definitely back in the meta. It has no real bad matchups and no real great matchups. Do you think it's specifically the combination, like we mentioned earlier, like what Rob was saying, of this Peter Pan plus the Maui Half Shark, of how we can kind of get this instant recursion value of, at least if the shark hits once, it's the threat of like, oh, I really can't even have an exerted character on board if they have a Peter Pan there and they're able to play a Maui Half Shark. Like, so yeah, curious to hear both of you guys' thoughts on the deck overall. I can see you smiling, Moyen. So do you think the deck's maybe not as good as people are saying? Do you think it's maybe more average, or what?
No, I think it's a good deck. I think it's, well, one, it's the Peter Pan enabling the shark without ramp, but also once you do get to establish a shark, suddenly you met with this. If you cannot remove the shark from Ruby Amethyst, it's not only that you don't want to exert, it's also, with you not exerting, you might still just completely lose all tempo against an Elsa. And then the deck has like actually more reliable card draw than all the Sapphire decks have now. So while it's not the fastest deck to get to a shark, it's like kind of once it gets there, it's very, very good at stabilizing, at continuously playing cards, at being able to play both proactively, reactively. It is a little bit slow to get there, right? In the first 3 turns, it doesn't do all that much. None of these plays really achieve that much, which gives like some ramp decks to give them time to ramp, which gives like Steel Song time to really pull ahead on the board until then. But when it does get to the late game, this is one of the strongest decks for sure.
Yeah. Rob, curious to hear your thoughts again. And did you face any of these Ruby Amethyst decks during your run?
I faced 3 of them. That's actually the deck that I lost to in Top Cut as well. while this is not a deck that I myself really enjoy playing, and because of the tension between being on the board so much and playing a 7-ink uninkable spell that removes the entire board, it does not feel like my playstyle. But the deck is impressive. It's exactly like Moyen described. The tension between having a shark on board that can just rush you with a Peter Pan, or even worse, just have you getting Elsa with a shark in play. It just feels horrible. Mm-hmm. I have not seen a lot of versions using the Queen's Castle, but once again, I can see that it's very nice to get the tension between having a shark on board and the castle, because what are you going to do? Not attack the castle? No, that's not an option. What do you want to do? Exert your guy against the shark? That's not really an option either. There's a lot of card draw in this deck, which is something I really liked seeing as a whole new world player, because please draw your cards. There was a turn where he spent 8 ink drawing like 5 cards, and then I whole new world the turn afterwards. That felt pretty good. Mm-hmm. But the deck is incredibly powerful, and as I described earlier, I think most of the red-purple decks are just a 50-50 matchup for basically every deck. You can find an angle to win every matchup, so it is very powerful.
Awesome, yeah.
I do honestly think, like, kind of the more these slow decks try to outgrind Ruby Sapphire, like, the worse they kind of get to Steel Song, right? Because all of these cards that enable you to win the long game also make you worse at playing for tempo immediately, which is exactly where Steel Song comes in.
I think during one of my Top Cut games, I started counting my opponent's deck around 35 cards. Mm-hmm. And for both of us at that point, it was already clear that would be my win condition. Yeah. And I did manage to win that game exactly as planned on decking him out with a whole new world.
Yeah.
So that is very awkward.
Okay. I guess we didn't even talk about my tournament at all. So I started into like 302.
I was just sorry. Yeah, I completely forgot to even ask. How was your tournament run, Moyen?
I was like, should I even talk about it, because it wasn't that great. But so after 5 rounds, I was 302, and with 500 players ish, I just needed like a 4th win, with maximum of 1 loss, would still almost be guaranteed. But then I had like 4 chances to get that last win, and I didn't quite get it, which happens. Of course, not the result I was looking for. I got like 90th place. I also realized that there's like this Lorcana site that kind of does like rankings from big tournaments. I only got to see it recently, because I think like some months ago we had something like an online ranking from big tournaments, but like that kind of got shut down. But now we have this, and I think it's pretty good. I think I'm like 20th on it, which is okay. I think, you always want to be
better than okay, Mr. Moyen. It's better than okay.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, I think if I it's not okay. I know I'm decent at the game, but I'm aware, like, let's say over this year of Lorcana, there was definitely few games that I win if I play better. So definitely a lot of room for improvement still. Okay, but we were talking about Red Purple. So then I wanted to anecdotally speak about the game I had against Red Purple, which was, and I got a 1-1. I almost 2-0'd them. I think the games were going incredibly well, and it was the only reason I could lose the second game was because the deck was like insanely teched for this exact matchup. Because again, game 1, I just like ran away with being able to proactively play as soon, like, manas and sharks, as soon as one of them wasn't matched. Kind of able to close out the game from there with just being ahead in tempo. And the second game went very, very similar. I could like force a B prep while having 2 mana in hand. So I go mana. And from there, I even have like a 3rd mana and a Let It Go in hand. So you could think like, okay, usually that's against like Red Purple lists that were played a few weeks ago. That was like a done game. But I already saw in the first game, I saw a lot of Finders Keepers, a lot of Tremaine, and 2 fish hooks. So then they go Maui fish hook. Maui and Maui fish hook. Mm-hmm. Clearing one of the manas. I'm like, okay, well, that's one of the worst things that could have happened, but I'm okay. I go replace my 2nd mana. Again, I have 2 manas on the board. Like, Let It Go the Maui. Mm-hmm. Go again. And then they just clear the next mana. And I clear again, and then they clear the 3rd mana, and suddenly they actually like recovered that. And then I would still be okay because I could like follow it up with sharks. But I kind of try to play it in a way where I then try to pressure with manas mostly, and only play sharks if I get actions. Because I saw so much removal and like the hand was kind of getting stuck with removal as well. So in the game's really close. I like needed them to miss one more removal a little bit later, and I can like finish the game with fight save. And then I talked down to sit down to talk with them about their list. It's like that's not a matchup I want to face. And it was 4 Finders Keepers, 4 Tremaine, and the 2 Fishhawk. It's like, yes, okay, there's answers for everything. And still there is this window where you can like get there because like I play the Shark turn 4, and there's like a window where, let's say I play Shark turn 4, Shark turn 5, have play a few actions, get ahead enough where that just is enough. Especially like with a double mana follow-up. But yeah, that's not a good matchup. That's pretty bad. But then on the other hand, I thought, okay, I don't think I want to be playing that type of Ruby Amethyst deck because, I might as well queue into Ember Steel and then
Exactly.
Then it's just too slow.
And then Rob's sitting there saying, yes, play into me with all of your really late game cards. Yeah.
Yes, draw some more cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you don't quite see it when looking just at the color combinations, but when you look at how decks were being built this tournament in these color combinations, I think that's really where you get to see why Ember Steel performed so well, because it really capitalized on mid-range slower decks building to beat Ruby Sapphire. Also, in my second round when I played against like Ember Steel, it was a crazy round because I knew if I win that second game, it will be in overtime. Like it was not possible to finish that game, and I knew that like 5 turns or something before. So I was just rushing through my turns, just trying to get enough turns in. I might be rushing to my loss, and I even missed like 3 lore, just because I was playing so fast. I even like missed some quests that didn't even have a downside. Like I had a Tipo on the board after clearing all the characters, and I didn't even quest with it. Stuff like that. But on my then I was able to pass my final turn with like 15 seconds on the clock, which then allowed me to gain that 1 extra turn.
Yep.
And also, I then have 3 turns left to win the game, and I was able to draw the exact amount so that I'm like left with 3 cards in deck for my last 3 turns. So that was like very, very stressful game.
I just want to touch on what you said earlier. You were like, I figured that you're 20th on the ranking list, but you feel like you've still been making a lot of mistakes. I feel like everyone still makes a bunch of mistakes during every single game. And I think it's like a hallmark of a good player that they at least recognize that they're still making a bunch of mistakes. Every now and then you'll see a match for slightly more casual players, and at the end of the match they're going to be like, I think I played it perfectly. I think I played it very well. I don't think I made any mistakes. And I'm like, I'm not going to point out any mistakes. I don't even know if I've necessarily seen any of them. But the fact that you think you made no mistakes is just, that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's in general, I think that's the first sign I have to think less of a player is if they tell me how they played perfectly.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone play perfect.
Okay, yeah, so moving into we've got 3 other events to talk about, but we're only going to be talking about the winning lists, just because like you were saying, Moyen, the metagame is so varied, and I just love to dive into it a little bit deeper. So there was a 128 player event in Canada. It was taken down by Green Steel. This is kind of, this Green Steel discard deck. I think we mentioned it on last week's episode of the podcast as well. But one of the cards you mentioned earlier, Rob, is this Emerald Steel Pete, the Floodborn Pete. So I'd love to hear maybe some thoughts on this deck. Maybe how you feel this matchup is specifically for Amber Steel. I think that would be quite interesting for the viewers to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I think this was one of the decks I was also considering. My friend's been testing this a lot and been doing really well with it. I think this is almost exactly his version too, apart from a higher count of coves, I guess. I think this is one of the few decks that I would consider a bad matchup as Ember Steel if it's piloted by a good pilot. Of course, the Ursulas are annoying, and you need an answer on time for Diablo. But also, like, the Prince Johns are obnoxious because you can't get rid of them since we've dropped the Grab Your Swords. And Ursula, a big one on the play, is also very hard to remove. I think the only way to do it is to have a Troubadour and a Zeus, or a lot of characters and maybe a Strength of Raging Fire. All these cards are just a pain, to be honest. And now, to make matters even worse, there's the big beat that disallows you to sing, which is a nightmare. So basically, if this deck is piloted by a good pilot, I think it's a very bad matchup, or could potentially be a very bad matchup for Amber Steel. But it is very difficult to pilot, and it also has a very big gap in the early game, I would say. Like, if someone goes the absolute stone cold nuts and goes like Diablo into Ursula Diablo, it's basically like an old Bucky draw, which is very hard to beat. But sometimes there's very bad openers, which gives you a good chance to get back into the game, or just to set up for future turns. But all in all, I really like this deck. For
sure, yeah. And I know
think it was very underrepresented in Ravensburg.
Yeah. And I think that was something that was mentioned... I watched an interview of Noimnot on the stream, where I think the interviewer asked him, it was like, I think there's been this general perception for a little bit that green steel, or maybe I don't want to say steel in general, but green steel has been like very popular in America, especially because it won a lot of like the DLCs and stuff at a stage, and maybe hasn't always been as popular within Europe. But I still think it's a super, super, super powerful deck. And Moyen, I know you spoke about this deck last week, because I think someone in the comments was asking, like, what's one of the most effective ways to beat Emerald Steel, because they felt like it was quite difficult. So yeah, like, and it's interesting, like you said as well, Rob, that it's a lower representation, because if there's a good player on it and they feel pretty comfortable into Steel Song against Ruby Amethyst, maybe it could be kind of a bit of a 50-50. Moyen, again, I know you spoke about it last week, but if you could like summarize this like really briefly, for what are some decks that can actually stop this deck again, just to remind the viewers, because again, a lot of people could be struggling against this, because like Rob mentioned, it just has crazy pop-off potential,
Yeah, so I think part of why sometimes people are looking for a deck to beat this, because losing to it can be so frustrating. Sometimes you they shift the Diablo early and they continuously sing songs to remove your stuff, discard your hand, play Peats, and sometimes there's not too much you can do about it. But I still think even its good matchups aren't like that great. I think any deck still has a shot against this, because anytime they miss Diablo on one, their entire opening is so much worse. That being said, I do think if you do want to beat it, I think we now found a good amount of decks that play quite well into it. And basically, those would be like the mid-range decks that can kind of incorporate Shark into their game plan, but also play like some amount of draw. So I think predominantly the deck I'm talking about is Ruby Amethyst. I think it can afford to play 4 Peter Pans, because it's not just in the Diablo answer. Its entire deck can be played around that card. And then on top of it, it can also play card draw that helps against both not getting discarded against Emerald Steel, but also in the grindier games and control matchups. So I think like decks that can play Peter Pan as more than a Diablo answer would be the main decks that I'd be looking at.
Yeah, on a card like Maui Hero to All is like such a clean answer to a card like this Pete, right? Because I believe it's it gets resist for something about pirate characters or whatever. So like even if it has that resist, right, the Maui can cleanly take it out. Sorry, this the text that probably matters the least, I guess, because it says and. But obviously, yeah, the biggest thing is that your opponent can't exert their characters to sing.
Right, I think it matters quite a bit. It's resist. It's resist on all. I mean, it often doesn't matter so much that it gives it to all pirates, but it gives itself resist, and I think that's very relevant.
Yeah, specifically, it becomes resistant to a Zeus.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is definitely notable for sure.
Amethyst with Crab, Ruby Amethyst with Maui is still quite well equipped at dealing with it efficiently.
Sure. The next event we're going to talk about is the Lucky Llama Smackdown. This was an event that took place within the US. It was a 97-player event, and Zan came out on top. He won the event with Jafar Steel Wheel, and this has kind of been the deck that like loads of people have been talking about. It's like, oh, is Jafar, I don't want to say is Jafar back, is Jafar like on top, is a really, really good deck. And I heard some people talking about it as well, where like I never usually go on these, but there was like a Twitter Spaces that was happening, and I think it was one of Zan's friends and DKP that were talking in it. He asked the question to DKP, Zan won with this deck. Do you think this is kind of a, I don't want to say like a one and done, but a bit of an experiment, something new to try and win with? And I spoke with Rob about this a little bit before we started the podcast, and it very much seems that surprise factor has a lot to do with this deck. But I'd love to hear both of your thoughts. Maybe we can start off with you, Rob. And I think the big thing that a lot of people are looking at when they look at this list is this deck's only on 3 A Whole New World. So that, to me at least, suggests that this deck can very much hold its own on a lot of the other characters and cards that it plays, and then it also has the benefit of having this Jafar package in it as well, and maybe that's why there's less A Whole New Worlds in the build. But curious to hear your thoughts on the deck overall.
I think the fact that people don't see this coming has a big role in why it did so well. But that doesn't mean that it's not also good. Like, purple steel decks have generally been very good. They're very powerful. They have a bunch of good cards definitely into the metagame. Like, you have a bunch of characters here that can challenge a Diablo, like the Jafars, which is a big thing. You're playing against control, stuff like Giant Cobra is always good. If you want to get back some tempo against aggressive decks, shifting your Robin Hood is always a good line. So there's a bunch of powerful stuff going on in this list. And if you add the combination of like, hey, surprise, here I am, 7 lore, I guess that's just a good way to finish it off. I am not completely confident in Zan's tweet. I'm not sure if he's being sarcastic with it or that he's absolutely serious. I have not tested his deck enough, so I'm not sure if he means like, I broke the format and this is great, or that he's just a very good player that's trying to have some fun with different kind of decks and just found a deck that's won the tournaments and is half jokingly saying that he broke the format with it. So no idea there, but I'm impressed by him taking down the event with this deck, and it does feel like a powerful deck. But now that the cat's out of the bag, I would not be surprised if this deck performed a little bit less good.
Sure, yeah. Jan, what are your thoughts on it?
Okay. Sure. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm bad at sarcasm with me being German at all, but I don't see the sarcasm. To me, it's like, if you tweet, I officially broke the format after winning an event, it seems like they're trying to say this is a great deck. And okay, to be fair, I didn't playtest this. I looked at it. There's nothing groundbreaking that I'm seeing. Like, we've tried, or when the lamp came out, I tried Jafar with the lamp. I guess what makes it better now. I guess what makes it better now is that like some other decks got worse because Flower Charm and Fortisfere don't exist anymore, but or for competitive play. But I don't see how that suddenly makes. And also, it's not like this is like beating something specific, right? That we have a very diverse metagame, and I don't see anything groundbreaking why this would suddenly be the meta breaker.
Sure, so it's just like a good general deck that can.
I don't know if it's a good deck. Like, it might be, but it also might not be. But still, like 90-player tournament, and congrats on winning the event.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially like with something new. Like, it's still good accomplishment, even if it doesn't mean this is the meta breaker.
For sure, yeah. And then the last event that I wanted to talk about was an 89-player event that took place in Stockholm, and it was basically just won by pretty much kind of a standard version of the Ruby Sapphire DKP list, except I had a couple of interesting inclusions. I had a one of Maui's Fishhook. It had 2 of the 5-cost Donald Ducks, which I don't believe is kind of always there. A couple of big Sisu.
Yeah, it's never
Hades.
there.
Okay, it's never there. Okay, yeah.
Usually it's never there.
What are your thoughts on that card? That's the one that is it just ramps a card off the top of your deck, right?
Yes, it's like a 5-cost
Mickey Mouse.
ramps off the top of your deck. Yeah, 5-cost Inkable Mickey Mouse. Actually don't hate it. It has some synergy with playing 7 drops with immediate impact like Hades. I usually prefer Scar. What I like about it is that it gives me something proactive to do, which sometimes the way the deck can lose if its few proactive threats get answered and then it doesn't have proactive plays anymore. So to follow up your mid game with something that gives kind of does a +1. It's a body that also provides a card. You go further towards like a prep or a Sisu or Shark plus action. I think it can be okay. Usually the biggest critique of the card is like the window where this card is good is very, very small, right? It's kind of exactly on 5 ink. It's on 6 ink. I'm not really on any other ink amount. I'm usually not happy playing it on it. And on top of that, the deck often plays how far I go on 3, so I'm not always even reaching the exact 5 ink threshold. And I guess if I'm on 6 ink, play Donald, it still gets me towards Sisu, which can be okay, but still generally I would really love to play this on 5 ink and exactly 5 ink. And then what I don't like is, what I like about it is it gives you another proactive play. What I don't like about it, that we're cutting a Tala, which is like a much less conditional, always decent proactive play. I think for Tala is, to me, very, very important to the deck. And I wouldn't look at Donald before putting in the 4th Tala, but I think that the Donald is still fine.
Sure, yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. I can definitely see the value of it coming down when you have 5 ink, exactly like you mentioned, to kind of ramp into these big, powerful 7-drop plays. Something to note, which I think is interesting, is I do believe that the person who won this, who's Henrik, I find this like this isn't specific to the person. So he was a student of DKP, but I find this term, I don't know why I find this term weird to say like, oh, my student, which I guess is fair because I think you've said a similar type
Padawan.
My apprentice, yeah. But I believe you've referred to it similarly, Moyen, in the past,
Sure.
right? It's just someone that you've coached before, right?
It's like it's kind of it's a little bit weird. It's like you feel accomplished and proud if someone that you coach does well, but then it's still a line you have to walk, which is like, okay, of course that's also great to say, okay, my student did well, which is kind of like advertising your coachment, because that kind of shows maybe the coaching was good. Doesn't have to be, but maybe it was good. But then also at the same time, it's always important to say, okay, I at least in my opinion, it's always important that the student is like, they are their own player. They won, and them taking coaching from anyone doesn't mean suddenly it's the coach's accomplishment. It's still first and foremost, I think it's always the player's accomplishment.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, like very impressive again. Like the reason I wanted to highlight all of these events is because they're events that have a significant amount of players, 89, 97, 128, and of course the big one, which is was 466. So yeah, like congrats to every player that placed well this weekend. I actually just want to take an opportunity to highlight some more upcoming stuff. So obviously, like the biggest thing, like I mentioned, set champ season is coming up, and I think a lot of people will be looking at these previous results and will probably be looking at this video, referencing this video to see, okay, I want to play a deck. I'll take one of these decks and use them as my building blocks, my template to bring the deck that I'm going to take to set champs. And then kind of after the set champ season, or kind of over it as well, we do still have that UK Games Expo event coming up on the pre-release weekend for Reign of Jafar, which is going to be like the last major set 7 event before we move into set 8. I think that's going to be kind of exciting. Most people will, I don't know, maybe some people will be like, oh, it's not as exciting because like I just want to play with the new cards, but I think it's cool to see like the last major tournament. How did the format kind of end? What did people consider to be like the best decks? That type of thing. I think that's always cool. And then another one I want to shout out that I know that's coming up for people within Europe is there's going to be one in Poland in Poznan. I think it's like the first weekend in June. Myself, Moyen, and Rob actually went to the first iteration of that event last year, which was a lot of fun. Where I believe it was in the top 4 where Rob actually knocked Spessy out, which was really cool. It was the first time I was aware of Rob, and I was like, wow, this guy must be very good at Lorcana. So yeah, I actually a little side tangent here. Myself and Rob hung out a lot at the it was the Toronto DLC, right? Like we were one of the
the few one,
one of the few Europeans that flew over together, and that was still to this day. I've said it a few times now. It was one of my favorite DLCs. Everyone was so nice. It was so welcoming, and it was just a really fun event. But there's another event coming up as well that will probably be announced by the time this podcast airs, which is in Belgium. Rob, I'll give you a bit of an opportunity to speak about it if you want.
I'm actually getting some live updates, and I think they're already half sold out at this point.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that for everyone that listens to the podcast, there will be some tickets available. It is organized by the Kolonisten in Turnhout, which sounds very Dutch, of course, but I'm hoping with some good Google results and us posting it in the chat, that should be okay. It's a very big 256-player capped tournament with some amazing prizes. The Ravensburg office in the Netherlands really hooked us up. And we managed to secure some other prizing as well in the form of an Elsa's Palace, an invited to the ball, and a couple of Let It Goes. So some of the really sweet challenge prizes, of course. If anyone's interested in competitive Lorcana, check it out.
For sure, yeah. We'll pop a link down below in the video description for anyone that's interested. And like you said, hopefully it's not sold out, but it's going to be a great time regardless. And like I can't speak enough about all these events that happen. Like besides the Ravensburg event, like these are all either local game stores or communities that are running these events that are keeping the Lorcana competitive scene alive while we're waiting for news on more DLCs, on Worlds, stuff like that. So I look at all these events and I'm just so grateful for the Lorcana community that we have. I'm grateful that people want to be competing more, want to host events, run events at a time that's a little bit dry currently. So yeah, shout out to the community. It's always been my favorite part about Lorcana. Honestly, it's like this game is amazing, but the community is what makes it for me, honestly. So it's just amazing to see. And with that, that's pretty much it. That's all of the topics that we had for this episode of the podcast. So Moyen Rob, I want to give you guys the opportunity to, if you've any final thoughts kind of leading into the next few weeks. We're gonna have some upcoming news next week on the if it's going to be like a lore cast or whatever, which is going to be exciting. We have the set 8 card reveals starting pretty soon, and it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for some new news. But yeah, I guess if I'm going to pose a question, the number one thing that I know from both of you guys will say is that you're just excited to hear some competitive news, I'm sure, and you probably just want to get back into competing, right? I personally really missed going to the DLCs and hanging out with everyone, seeing all the familiar faces. I'm really excited for when that's gonna start up again. And just any final thoughts in general, and maybe some stuff that you guys would what's the announcements that you're really eager to hear about?
The thing I'm most excited about is just getting new challenge dates. Ravensburg has been doing a fantastic job at everything else. The only thing I need right now is new challenge dates, so I can finally start booking some weekends to play my game again. Apart from that, there's some closing words. I'm not going to make this a thank you mom and dad moment, but I know there's a lot of teams out there right now, a lot of competitive teams, and they're doing really well. I just want to do a quick shout out to an American team that we met in Canada. It's the Glimmers. They're doing it slightly different. They're doing a positive approach to the game, being advocates to new players, and just branching out as positivity in the game. And I think that's super important. Not that the other teams are not important, because I like the competitive aspect as much as the next guy. But I like a team just doing something different and just being a positive influence for new players and, basically anyone around there.
Amazing. That's awesome. And Moyen, what's the news that you're most eager to hear, would you say?
Yeah, but I'm almost at first last 2 months it was okay, I want to know more about Worlds. Even if I'm not qualified, I want to know when is it, where is it, what's the format, everything. I'm kind of I'm kind of beyond that now. I feel like we've been waiting for so long. I wouldn't even be satisfied with that anymore. I kind of want to know, okay, when can I play again?
Sure.
Yes.
I just want to play the next competitive cycle and try again to see how well can I play? How far does it take you?
How far you'll go, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, how far will I go?
Into the unknown, huh?
Mm-hmm.
No, if you ask us, you have to say yourself as well.
Oh, it's the same. Yeah, it's
I was about to say.
it's 100% the same thing. Yeah, it's competing, it's traveling, it's getting to hang out with you guys more. Honestly, like this game is about community, and it's just great. And the biggest thing, yeah, it sounds like a small thing maybe, but it's what you said, Rob. It's like having dates mainly because so I can book them off work and make sure I can actually travel on these dates and not be like, oh, I can't because I've already taken holidays, or it's just general planning. It goes a long way, so
yeah. Also, so I mean, we're not going anywhere, but with all of the downtime that we were having, Kawa and I decided to go to like the Star Wars major this weekend, and except sets, so I played a bit set 1, but other than that, like I tried learning it last week, the last 3 sets. So I don't have the highest expectations, but I'm looking forward to, like, it's always fun to try out yourself in a different TCG, because it always requires, like, there's a lot of thinking that you can apply, but there's also a lot of stuff that's different. And kind of gives you like a good reality check of how capable you are in general outside of the bubble of the one game that you're currently playing.
For the record,
I was actually considering the same tournament as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, funnily enough, I know you're saying, Moyen, like you're only you're learning the game like the last 3 weeks and stuff. So Moyen's borrowing my like card collection because I've been playing Star Wars since set 1, and I've still given them, and I've no problem with this. I have such confidence in you, Moyen, of like knowing how good of a general TCG player you are, that I'm giving you first preference on the deck list in terms of whatever you want to play, you can play.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I know, I have a feeling, and this is, again, like I said, like this is pure my confidence in you. I know how good of a TCG player you are, so I would not be surprised in the least amount if you perform better than me. Because sure, I've played this game for a lot of sets, and I know generally I'm a good card game player, but I'm just more excited to see you play. I'll see you probably place well, and like my favorite thing from all the DLCs, honestly, is when my friends have performed well and I'm there cheering their mom and supporting them, right? Because I know that if I was in that position, I would want the same thing. You know what I mean? So like have the confidence in yourself. I know it's it's a different game, but like you said, there are a lot of fundamentals that you can pull from games like Lorcana, from stuff like Magic. You've played Hearthstone in the past, obviously, so yeah, like just enjoy it, and like I said, while there's a bit of downtime, why not try something new out, right?
Yeah, may the Lord be with you.
Yeah, may the Lord be with you, indeed. Yeah, a little side thing. Just I know we're tangenting on a little bit, but I've actually really been enjoying watching a lot of Magic videos lately, and diving back into the past. I've been watching some videos that Frank did with the Card Market team, where he explores like World Championship decks from like 1998 to like 2002 type of stuff, which is hilarious because I'm like, wow, I wasn't even born when some of these World Championships were taking place. But it's really cool because I'm seeing like so many mechanics in, I guess, like old school Magic that I still think would be interesting in, like, say, like Lorcana at this stage. And it's like really cool to see how far a game like Magic has come in terms of game design and development, and what combos were like back then. It's fascinating to me, and I think a lot of people, if you're interested in card games and TCGs in general, videos like that where you watch like kind of like old school Magic, or like maybe more of the basics, it's just entertaining and it's super interesting. So yeah, I've been enjoying watching stuff like that, and I'm sure, Rob, like I'm sure you've enjoyed seeing the similarities and the differences between a game like Magic and Lorcana over the time of playing it, right?
Yeah, definitely. But to be honest, I've enjoyed most TCGs out there, to be honest. I just like the fundamentals. I like the competitive aspects, but in Lorcana, the social and the how do you call this? The general atmosphere that is represented in the tournament is just great as well. So it's a combination of everything. But yes, Magic videos, especially the old school ones, are amazing, and you can learn a lot from them, even if you're not playing it at all.
For sure, definitely. Well, with that, I'm going to close out this week's episode of the podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. The number one thing that you can do is you can leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. There is a video version of this available over on youtube.com/@PodcanaPodcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. Twitters are @Moyen_HS, @Rob De Haan 1987, and @Kawatech_CG. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you in next week's episode.